Welcome to Brick by Brick, where we'll be speaking to younger and older members of the LGBTQIA community, establishing a timeline of the efforts that have brought us this far, and looking toward the future at the work that still needs to be done. This show is brought to you by One Roof Chicago, a nonprofit organization dedicated to building a queer, intergenerational housing community on Chicago's South Side. My name is Chijoke Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and today we'll be speaking with Jireh, whose reputation alone has endlessly impressed me. Hi, Jireh.
Hey there.
Would you mind telling us your name and pronouns?
Yeah, what's good, y'all? My name is Jireh Drake. I use they, them pronouns.
Incredible, and thank you for joining us today. Just to start off then, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your story?
Yeah, I am from the South Side suburbs. I've lived in the Midwest my entire life. And then I came to Chicago to go to school here, and I just stumbled into the greatest community ever, and had some really phenomenal bosses and mentors, and then got deep into the grassroots community.
Yeah. Say more, please. What is some of the grassroots work you've done, or the community that you've been part of?
Yeah. Well, I went to school for art and African and Black diaspora studies. And so I was co-founding member of For the People's Artists Collective, which is a radical collective of Black and brown artists. And then we founded BTGNC Collective, which was for BTGNC People For and By, and Asada's Daughters. I literally just started to meet great people, and they were come to this table.
Incredible.
And it's really exciting because I was the youngest person at the table. And just shaping, these foundational orgs.
That's incredible. And you mentioned BTGNC. For those who don't know, can you tell us what that stands for?
Yeah, BTGNC means Black, Trans, Gender Nonconforming.
Yeah, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that is a community that has been especially rewarding to be a part of in Chicago.
Yeah, I've definitely taken a pause from those collectives. Mm-hmm. But it was just so beautiful and so transformative for me, especially as I grew up in the church, so queerness and transness were not exactly the most welcomed. And to just I remember coming to that table and being oh, I don't know if I identify as trans, but I'm in the room founding this collective. And then in the end I was oh no, transness is so expansive, and so and it can be anything, I am trans. I don't know, it was a really beautiful moment.
I love that. And I might want to circle back again to the expansiveness of transness, because that is something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
But for the moment, I guess, can you point to a specific moment in your life that made you want to join these things? Was there a specific person or mentor who made this feel very appealing? Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so I've been volunteering my whole life. And I just feel volunteering is just, no shade, maybe just the watered down version of organizing, because organizing is volunteering, but it has it has political rhetoric that isn't just about serving, or hopefully doesn't stumble too far into a savior complex. But yeah, just growing up religious, I've just been volunteering for a very long time, and I did that in college. I held multiple jobs because I had to pay for school, and I remember being at this conference, this Student Justice Initiative conference, I think. And I remember earlier that year, Trayvon Martin was murdered. And we actually, I think his birthday is in February. It's really close to my birthday. His birthday's in February, and then my birthday comes up, and we're the same age. And I remember that being so... Yeah, I was just oh my gosh. And then I think later that year, Sandra Bland was then murdered. And I remember being at this conference and just thinking, wow, this woman knew her rights and was pushing back against the system, and the system still won. And I remember feeling so hopeless, and at this conference, and Sandra Bland, is a Black person and has locks. So I just found a lot of similarities between me and Trayvon and Sandra Bland. But yeah, and I was wow, something has to be done. And so at the time I was deep into I don't know, doing a lot of volunteering for DePaul, and then I was because that's where I went to school, and I was oh, I need to start pushing back against DePaul. I need to start pushing back against the city. I think those were really transformative moments that I still remember.
Yeah. And I mean, I can see that radicalizing anyone to see people who look like you and occupy a similar social space to you not being given the proper respect or even being seen as human. So that makes a lot of sense. And as a bit of a transition, I see you wearing a Defund the Police shirt.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yes.
I have to ask, is that related to some of the stuff that you've done in the city or some of the stuff that you've wanted to work toward?
Yeah, abolition is absolutely a dream of mine. And by abolition, I mean the dismantling of, right? Like prisons, borders, pipelines, really violent systems, and the building of something that's transformative and community-based and healing-centered. And I think I didn't grow up being radical or anything, but I definitely grew up seeing my father experience a lot of racism in the workplace, and I just didn't understand it. And it wasn't until college that I was like, oh, this makes sense. This is a part of a system. This is how the system works, which is to discriminate against Black and brown people. And so it took me a minute to become an abolitionist. But once I heard about this, I was like, oh my gosh, absolutely. The system is a problem, and it has to be thrown away. Any system that's rooted in, violence, and particularly the police were, before they were the police that we know today, right? They were a slave patrol. They were to protect property, right? And even now they're still to protect property. When we look at who are the police protecting, quote unquote, who are the police serving when there's protests? It's downtown buildings. When we look at what's happening with Hurricane Helena, it's stores, making sure they're not being looted. So the police are to protect property, and if that's what they're rooted in, then there's no way that we can change that to be better. No amount of reform is going to get the police to be, for the people. So the police, the military, the whole shebang, the whole system. Yeah.
And so you said For the People. Can we talk a little bit about For the People Artist Collective and how you believe that art, and this is so funny, I had prepared questions, but you've already given me so much that I want to ask about. But can we talk a bit about the role of art in community and the role of art toward activism in changing the world and the community?
Yeah, the role of art in community and the role of, what was the latter part?
I suppose the role of art in changing the community or changing the world.
Okay, yeah. Monica Trinidad, a phenomenal Chicago artist, had and I'm sure a few others had the idea to corral's maybe not the best word, but to pull together a bunch of organizers who are also artists. How do we best use our talents? Everyone has a role in the revolution, and it doesn't have to be on the front lines. And I think that's really important for us to believe and embody. And so, yeah, I think the role of art is to, for sure, document with soft and kind eyes by the people, right? By the people, for the people. And then I also think it's to challenge, right? To challenge the narrative, often we see a cop car burning on fire when we talk about abolition, and what else could it be? Yes, flip over the cop cars, burn them down. But what else could it be, So just expanding our consciousness and our ability to imagine. I also think that I really love art in the visual sense and also the sonic sense. I'm always really interested in chants and songs, which is what I've been doing a little bit lately. But yeah, I think something that was really exciting for People's Artist Collective started to make coloring books called Color Me. That was the series. So it was Color Me Rising, Color Me Resisting, and then Color Me Healing. And it was a way to document the year's organizing and also create a tool for adults, parents, and caregivers to talk to young folks. And so it's this really cool multi-use tool. And obviously it's an invitation for adults to, settle and release and sit and ease and color, because coloring books aren't only for children. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's important, as artists, I think it's important to be yes, we need to document via interviews, right? And in libraries and in archives, and also movement art is documentation too, and also like how do we expand the way we're documenting. So I think those coloring books were really exciting for me, and I was featured in every single one, and then the last one that was released in 2017 I was the curator of, and so I was just really excited to do that. It was called Color Me Healing, and I was like, let's uplift the healing that was like seated in all of our actions, and like how are we caring for each other. I feel like I didn't answer the latter question.
That's kind of okay.
Okay.
I feel like at this point, I am just trying to create space for you to talk about all of these things, and there's so many things. We don't have enough time to cover everything I want to ask you, so it's okay if we just pinball around a bit.
Okay.
I guess, so you talked a bit about the image of the burning cop car and that being one of the things, but not the entire dream, which instantly made me think about the idea of sending social workers to things that we often send police to, that police do not need to be sent to. And I like the idea of imagining a better world that is somewhat included in the violent revolution, but revolution doesn't always need to be violent. Sometimes it does. Yeah. But sometimes it is just imagining a world that no one has yet had the bravery to conceive. And so I like the idea of filling that role with art, imagining songs or dance and documentation of joy that could be more if we did not have people with their boots on our necks. And so that being said, I know you mentioned something about sonic art, and in your biography that you sent me, you talked a bit about hymns. Can you talk to me about that a bit?
Yeah. Well, first off, I just learned this new chant from some really cool organizers and some really cool Filipino organizers in the DC, and it goes, no boots on the ground, no bombs in the air, U.S. out of everywhere. No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air, U.S. out of everywhere.
Ooh. Wait, can we do it together?
Yeah.
All right. No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air, U.S. out of everywhere. No boots in the ground, no bombs in the air, U.S. out of everywhere.
Hey.
Ooh, shivers. Okay.
Yeah.
I really like that. I really, really like that. Sometimes at protests, I hear people doing the chants or the hymns, and I kind of wonder, did they come up on the spot, or were they created ahead of time? Because some of them are too catchy to have just been, like, made in that moment. So now I'm seeing a bit of the behind the scenes of that. And
yeah.
Where did you say you found that one?
From some Filipino organizers in DC.
Wow. Was this for an event specifically, or did you just run into them on the street and you knew you were at the same store?
Yeah, there's some really rad Filipino organizers. Anak Bayan is a I think a nationwide organization, and they're doing I've been to a few Filipino for Palestine events. And it's just like the coalition of just like connecting our struggles, right? So it's oh gosh, I don't know if I'm gonna get it right, but it's from the Philippines to Palestine. Oh gosh. Let's see. All I know is definitely the one that's right now in my head is from Palestine to Mexico, the border walls have got to go.
That's a good one.
And then you could also do, right, from Palestine to Chicago, the border walls have got to go, or like the jails have got to go. And just like, I think it's just like about connecting our coalition. And I really love chants, right? I really love, and songs. I really love pulling from like traditional like slave hymns or gospel songs and bringing them back up, because a lot of songs were used, right, in the apartheid or during civil which apartheid? Jesus. The South African apartheid, right? Or in the civil rights era, right? And I think that's so beautiful. And I also love writing new chants as well. Yes. Because some of the chants that we have right now are flawed, whether they be ableist, right? Or whether they just be like, the whole damn system is guilty as hell, indict, convict, send those killer cops to jail. It's like, actually, no. Like, I think... Because it includes jail, to be anti-carceral. Yeah, and then, like, the whole damn system is guilty as hell, but you're using the system to then try to hold them accountable. I'm like, the chant itself is conflicting. And obviously there are some really great chants like, hey, hey, ho, ho. People love to say these killer cops have got to go, but we can change that, right, to, hey, hey, ho, ho. I don't really know what to change it to because I don't really like that chant. I think it's basic and boring.
I mean, truly, the first one that you gave us already is echoing in my head. I'm trying to be like this, but inside I'm like, hey. Oh. So I feel you. I like bringing that dynamic energy to it. I like giving folks something to say that echoes in their heart for long enough that they keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think that's incredible. And especially tying together these concepts, like especially the world being better because of anti-carceral, anti-imperialist work will be the case wherever it is we're trying to work on it. It is all over that needs to be changed. And so music is music, rhythm, hymns are one of those things that are universal. And so I love the idea of connecting people and causes using them.
Yeah.
That's great.
I definitely think one of my favoriteest chants that me and a co-collaborator wrote was for No Cop Academy, which was a Black and brown youth-led initiative of pushing back on the city who was about to spend $95 million on a cop academy, right?
Again.
So it was I believe it was 2017, 2019 citywide campaign. And I was brought on to just support as a youth worker. And also I really love doing train takeovers because you just need a few people. Wait 1 second. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. I was brought on to lead a train takeover, which I love train takeovers because you just need a few people to take the train over and then directly talk to train passengers. So we got on the train and we were like, do you know the city's trying to spend $95 million on a cop academy? Like, what else would you spend that on? Regardless if you're an abolitionist or not, $95 million in the city when mental health clinics have been closed, when schools have been closed, when parks and libraries are underfunded, that is atrocious. Right? And so one of the chants we came up with, there's the classic one, which is No Cop Academy, a 95 mil for community. I said a No Cop Academy, a 95 mil for community, right?
I love that. I love that so much.
It's and then the other one was, we know the truth. We got the stats. If the city's so broke, where they get the money at? Hey! Where they get the money at? Hey! Where they get the money at?
Hey!
Where they get the money at?
Hey! Truly though, where? Actually, it does not make sense. I worked at a public library for 5 years, and I saw so many people there who were at the lowest point in their life, who really just needed a chance, just needed resources, just needed somebody to listen. And we had one social worker with a caseload of at least 30 people, all of whom were going through some very intense stuff. And I would say at the very least, 3 times a month, the police got called on them. Oh. Even with a social worker there, it was like, oh, you're sleeping here? Police. Oh, we don't like how you're talking to us and we don't want to de-escalate or we don't want to work on making this peaceful. Police. It was like they were outsourcing all of the social needs that could have been handled with effort to people who we knew were not going to handle it as well. And so when thinking about what resources we have and what we channel them toward, I'm always thinking about we could be using social workers way more effectively. We could be putting this money into housing as opposed to using this money to punish the people who need housing. It's like a jacked up triangle where it's you never get what you need, but you're always being punished for not having it.
Yeah, how do you get an ID if you don't have an address? Now you can't use a post box, a PO box. So how do you get that? Or how do you get a job if you need an ID? How do you get a social security if you need an ID and you don't have an address? It's like a catch-22, the worst catch-22, and it's such an intentional catch-22. This is the way. When I think about it more and more, I'm like, the system is just working how it's supposed to work. It's working perfectly. Yeah. It's oppressing people. It's creating people that are going to take these minimum wage jobs that are going to keep them in the cog of living paycheck to paycheck and letting rich people get richer. And so just further divide upon, class and just people's realities.
Yeah. And the people who don't have to deal with these class realities, are the ones who are further incentivized to continue being so. Because as long as we have a class of people who are clearly, visibly struggling, that will incentivize everyone else to be like, oh, I don't want to be in that position.
Yeah.
So I will just accept the minimum wage job. I will accept the horrible conditions I'm in because it could always be worse. And if we cleaned things up and made it so that those people were actually elevated and not in that position, who would we then have to dangle over our heads like a sword of Damocles? Who would the threat be? How would we focus on making the world better? Oh yeah, we would actually start changing things.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we've strayed a bit in the most delicious way. So I'm going to roll us back a bit.
I have one thought.
Please.
I think the power of like sonicness and whatnot is that No Cop Academy will forever be remembered because the sound of it, the sheer sound, and just like the way the creative ways that we were organizing, from train takeovers to disrupting city hall meetings to waking up older people, right? And it was like all youth led and just like such a beautiful thing. And I just think that's what's so important. Like when you think about protests and organizing, often you remember the visuals and the sound and the feeling. And I think that the sound just directly impacts your feeling. Yeah. And I'm not going to say that art is the end all be all, right? Like you gotta we have to create work, and then we also have to organize at the same time. And so I'll stop there.
I love it, and it's all true, and I'm so glad that we got you saying that on camera because that is important.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to try to speed round through these.
Okay.
If you could change one law or policy detrimental to our community, what would you change?
Definitely like criminalizing housing, I think. Criminalizing homelessness.
Yeah.
And something around property, because I'm like, we have all these like empty buildings. We don't have to be a city that has a very high people who are experiencing homelessness.
Absolutely. And so, looking forward, you've talked a lot about what you've done in recent years and a lot of that motivation. And so, in the next few years, what are your goals? What do you hope to do? What do you hope to change, or at least work toward?
Yeah, I think right now I've lived here for 11 years. I've made Chicago my home, which is so beautiful. And I think in college I was holding multiple jobs and multiple collectives and really just burning the candle at both ends. And like, I really had high grades, which was like a ridiculous ask of myself, but I was like, I have all these scholarships, so I was just moving so fast, and I think it was really detrimental to my well-being. So I think I'm really focusing. I'm really focusing on this is a fight for the long run, and how do we exist? How do we take care of ourselves? So if this is a fight for the long run, how are we existing and how are we taking care of ourselves? And so I think that's why I've turned to song a lot, which is like, I'm trying to like regulate our nervous system, or I'm trying to ensure that people on the front lines also have like a tool belt of tools that help them calm down or help them, I don't know.
Rest.
Yeah, rest, because I think the survival mode that we're in is shortening our lifespans. And so how do we make sure that we're here for when the revolution comes, or the small wins that will come in our lifetime? Oh my gosh, I forgot. The first thing that I ever, my first taste of organizing was when we got word that, the Chicago torture, that we got reparations for the Chicago torture. I'm forgetting a word. In 2015.
I think I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like that was the first, I literally came into organizing on a win.
Ooh.
And so I know that wins are possible. And it's important to remember that there's small and big wins. So I don't know, I'm just like, I know that we can change this. I know that we can hold the system accountable. I know that we can like rip the system down. Like I know this to be true because that's where I started as an organizer.
I think that is incredibly important to note because I have noticed that some people get into organizing, and like you're talking about, burning that candle at both ends, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of movement, and when we don't see immediate results, that passion and movement can kind of ebb a little bit. Folks don't completely give up, but there's a feeling of hopelessness or slight nihilism to it. And I think it's really important to note that these things are always worth doing. The effort is always important. People's lives and happiness and making the world a better place is always worth pursuing. And just because we step down or de-escalate a little bit in terms of resting or taking care of ourselves doesn't mean it's not worth it. And I really appreciate you coming in and reminding us of that today.
Yeah, of
Thank you,
course.
Jireh.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Oh,
I think we have about 30 seconds left.
I think it's just really important to check in on your friends and care for each other, right? And so maybe that's a phone call, maybe that's bringing food, and that's resting so that we have like enough tenacity to like keep on fighting. And I just think rest is as important as the fight.
Ashe. Thank you, Jireh, for being on Brick by Brick today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll see you all next month.